Guys, we're going to talk today about the trip that Dr. Peter took to the United States, and he visited different, states and different cities as well for the sake of the gospel. So now we're going to find out how is the United States now doing with the gospel. Is it accepting to be, in the United States to go publish Jesus or the Bible itself, or what is really the outcome that he found in those different states? Without any delay, we greet you all in the mighty name of Jesus. And thank you once again for taking your time and watching this video. Welcome, Doctor. How are you?
Praising God.
How are you doing again?
Well, I'm still recovering from jet lag, a lot of travels, but I only got back last week and still trying to adjust to new time zones, but it's a good productive time in the United States.
Thank you so much. I believe that it is good for us to talk about your trip in the United States. But before we do that, do you mind if you present yourself to the people that don't know you?
Certainly. I've had the privilege of being a missionary now for over 43 years, mainly to restricted access areas, to persecuted churches. I've ministered in 38 countries, including in 8 wars, and I've gone through 3 revolutions. It's been my privilege to be involved in Bible distribution, including Bible smuggling into countries where the Bible is forbidden, like communist countries and Islamic jihadist nations. So it's been my joy to be involved in distributing literally millions of gospel booklets and hundreds of thousands of Bibles in about 100 different languages over the last 43 years.
Thank you so much, Doctor. And going to the United States, you went there for the gospel's sake.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about how you find your trip. Was it easy, or what are the difficulties that you face or challenges in that trip?
Well, there are always difficulties and challenges in air travel these days, ever since the terrorists of September the 11th, 2001 complicated travel. It's very hard to travel overseas without being treated like a criminal, and the TSA in particular are very intrusive and take off your belt, take off your shoes, empty out your pockets, empty out everything in your bag, basically. And they are very intrusive. One thing that was funny, on a recent travel, I had, going through a scanner in England, the security people said, "Is that money you've got in your pocket?" I said, "But my jacket," I said, "It's gospel tracts." And they didn't believe me. And there's a wad of gospel tracts, and they thought maybe it's a wad of money. And I thought, well, that would be a nice problem to have, but we don't have those sort of problems. But I do have my pockets filled with gospel tracts wherever I go, and to think that they were so intrusive, wanting to know what you're doing. What's that wad of paper in your pocket? Is that a wad of money? And it just shows you that they're looking for all sorts of things. You are no longer innocent till proven guilty, you're not guilty till proven innocent, and they just assume everything you do is wrong. That seems to be a violation of law, that you no longer have free travel. I remember when I first got back from going behind the Iron Curtain, smuggling into Eastern Europe, in Checkpoint Charlie in East Germany, and I reported back to people, they search you, they search every pocket, they pat you down, you've got to take your shoes off, and the intrusiveness, and they want to see your papers all the time. This is going through Checkpoint Charlie behind the Iron Curtain to East Germany. And people in America are saying, "Oh, that could never happen here in America." And now it's happening in America. In fact, it's worse than the Iron Curtain used to be. In fact, I think the Stasi were more polite, and the secret police we dealt with behind the Iron Curtain were more efficient than the people we've got to deal with going through England or America these days.
Yeah, I think that is the challenge that everybody goes through, especially I went to the same thing when I traveled in Africa a couple of months ago.
Sadly.
Yes, I think all the airport or, the entry level, they just updating the securities and try to get, the bad guys who are coming into the country. I think that, to me, I will look at it as normal.
Sadly, yes. But it didn't used to be like that.
It wasn't like that before. I think people were different back in the days because technology now has raised a lot of things in our days.
But you would also think the technology would make it easier. They've got X-ray machines, they've got metal detectors. But they still, even after you go to the metal detectors and so on, they still want to pat you down, check this, empty out your pockets, sort of take your shoes off. You would have thought they can detect things adequately with their technology, but no, they've got to still be intrusive. And they're wanting to know what are you carrying and why are you going and where you're going and who you're going to see and what has it got to do with them, actually? The government's meant to be your servant, not meant to be your master. So in the name of security, I think a lot is being done which they claim is for our security, but it's probably more because they're trying to inhibit our freedom.
I think the goal has always been to control the people. So,
yes, true.
And I think that all the technology that they're bringing is just there to control people. And you were there for about a month or 3 weeks?
That's correct. From about 3.5 weeks, I was in the United States, and it started off with me being invited to World Missionary Press. Now, they are a magnificent ministry. They are printing something like 10 million gospel booklets every month. In fact, I think this last month, they were hitting a record of 14 million gospel booklets in a single month. Now, they've got a core of experienced, trained printers and other key people in the staff. But a lot of the work's done by volunteers. So Christians, including churches, youth groups, homeschool families coming through, and they often come and they help to pack and to assemble and to stack the boxes. And this is one way how the ministry works so well, is they depend a lot on volunteers. So they've actually got some guest cottages, but then they've also got a trailer park where you could come with your caravan or your trailer, hook up, and you hook up to some outlet that'll give you electricity or water and things like this. And so people come and they literally pitch their tent, park their caravan, and they come in to work each day and volunteer. And amongst the people that come and volunteer are what they call plain people. Now, I don't know how many of our viewers know what the plain people are. It includes the Amish, the Mennonites, and the Old German Brethren. Now, I was able to have quite a lot of fellowship with the Old German Brethren around town in these areas where in New Paris, Indiana, they've got the World Missionary Press. You'd see hitching posts for horses in the parking lots because there's people who are still driving these old horse and buggies from the 19th century, and those are the Amish. The Mennonites will drive cars, but they'll only be black cars, and they won't have different colors, and they are old style. Then you get the Old German Brethren, and to describe an Old German Brethren church service, it sounds very similar to the Amish and the Mennonites. All the women sit on one side, all the men sit on the other side. All the women are wearing dresses, very plain dresses, and they're all wearing a kind of bonnet or kapi on their head. And the men are all dressed in black suits with white shirts, and that includes the young children, the male young children. And they don't have music in the church, they only sing psalms and hymns a cappella without any accompanying musical instruments. And the elders lead, and it's very traditional, very strict, but you see such large families. I mean, families of 6, 8, 10, 12 children, healthy and happy, and the women don't wear any makeup, and there's no jewelry. So it's quite extraordinary. It's like a step back in time, back to when nobody wore jewelry and all the women have long hair and all the men have short hair. The other thing that made me...
Is that to all churches?
I'm talking about the Old German Brethren.
Okay.
And these are what they call the plain people, which they live plain lives. They try to protect themselves from technology. There will not be a TV set in their homes, just for starters. You won't see newspapers. And all the men wear beards, interestingly. So I kind of stood out there. all the men might wear a suit and white shirt.
So I'll be part of them though as well.
Yeah, it would just have to be bigger and fuller. Because I don't think they even trim their beards, because they've got full beards. And so they might think you're a very young person.
I see.
But you haven't had a chance to let your beard grow properly yet.
I see.
So the men don't wear ties. They wear a black suit with a white shirt but no tie. So I kind of stood out because I wore a tie and I was shaven. So obviously I didn't quite fit. But they're also pacifists. So they were saying to me, it must be hard being a pacifist or practicing non-resistance in Africa. And I said, it's impossible. And I said, even the pacifists in Sudan have joined the army and are armed and fighting. When you get jihadists attacking, burning your church, crucifying your pastor, enslaving your children. Even a pastorist will fight. Nobody's going to put up with that at this length. But these people, their ancestors all came from Germany in the 1600s. They migrated to America because it was too violent in Europe. And I pointed out, it's easy to be a pacifist in America, in Lancaster County or Indiana, because you've got oceans separating you from your enemies, and you've got layers of police and army to protect you. But you can't be a pacifist in the average country in Africa because it's too dangerous, too violent. So, interesting on that point, but it's refreshing to see people who can disconnect from technology and fashions and fads and live a simple life. And their children look healthy and happy.
And how many cities that you visited, as a whole?
I don't know how many cities I visited, but I was in five states.
Five states.
I was in Indiana, I was in Washington, D.C., Virginia, and Florida and Georgia. Okay. So I did get to big cities like Orlando and Atlanta. Those are some of the biggest cities.
Los Angeles? Were you in Los Angeles?
I was nowhere near the West Coast. I was just on the East Coast.
Okay.
Which was enough. I mean, there's enough traveling as it is. But I had home meetings and midweek services, Sunday service, of course, every Sunday, seminars sometimes on the Saturday. It was a good time, a lot of questions. I took over 2 big boxes of books, which were sold very quickly. The interest in literature was great. A lot of people added to the mailing list, people interested in our mission, some people interested in volunteering and coming here. At one point, they didn't have any volunteers for one particular afternoon at the World Mystery Press, so I volunteered. And I thought, well, I am always receiving these tons of gospel booklets. Let me get involved in some of the production side. So they put me in binding, and in that afternoon, I'm just talking about one afternoon, the supervisor said we had bound, boxed, sealed, and stacked on pallets 100,000 gospel booklets, which just shows the efficient system. They've got good machinery, good equipment, a good system, good staff, and of course, volunteers, which makes this work. And we benefit ourselves. We get these World Missionary Press gospel booklets by the ton. While I was there, we had 2 40-foot containers arrive here at Livingston House. And that includes something like 4 million gospel booklets came to us in more than 20 languages that we could distribute far and wide, which, what a wonderful ministry to provide spiritual ammunition for the world war of worldviews to bring people to Christ.
And what were the difference between, the churches in South Africa compared to the churches of the United States as you went to preach there in different cities and different states?
Well, I don't think I'd come across any church like the old German brethren I saw in Indiana, where they are.
Okay.
Totally no makeup, no jewelry whatsoever, where all the men are without ties, but they're in suits and white shirts, and the ladies all wearing hats. And so that kind of conservative church is pretty unique. I've never seen that anywhere outside of America, except I could say in the old Eastern Europe. I used to see that. But it's good that America's got the freedom that you can have people who can even decide to opt out of all the technology of the society and just live simple, or what they call plain lives. And maybe we are too invaded by too much technology. Now, we believe in technology. I don't think there's anything wrong with technology. We're using video format right now, and I use that in a lot of my presentations.
Absolutely.
And we believe in websites. Technology can be used for the glory of God.
Absolutely.
So there's nothing wrong with technology, but we need to see it as it's a dangerous servant and it's a fearful master. Let's make technology our servant, never make it our master.
And when you picture in the side of AI, as you say that technology is a good thing, I know in somehow it is good, but it's also bad in another way, because today we've seen on the social media, for example on YouTube, there are plenty of people who are being manipulated, that they have been talking about things which they're using AI to use their voice, and they say things that they never say to the people.
Deep fakes, yes. And
don't you see any danger in that?
A lot of danger. So when I was growing up, there's the saying, the camera never lies. But that's not true.
Yes.
There isn't a whole series of planets far, far away. Star Wars is not reality, it's fiction. And yet you could say, but I saw it. Seen the Death Star, and I've seen Darth Vader and the Stormtroopers. And it must be real because the camera never lies. But that's not true anymore. The camera does lie. And that's why we've got science fiction movies. But they're not true.
I believe you.
And so we've got to be so careful. This can be used not just for Hollywood entertainment, it can be used for fake news, fake history, disinformation. We need to be very cautious, which is why the Bible tells us over and over, do not be deceived. And be not deceived. It's the amount of warnings about false prophets, false teachers, false shepherds, and false messiahs for that matter. We must be discerning, cautious. I should say also that I saw other churches that were very modern in their ways of operating, but there seems to be a return in some churches, at least the ones that invited me, back to the Bible, back to the Reformation teachings, where the people are trying to be very faithful to the Word of God. I was involved also with some of the pro-life activities. Now, we know about Roe v. Wade being reversed, which is that the previous attempt by the Supreme Court to forbid any state to ban abortion or legislate against abortion was forbidden or suspended. That was reversed 2 or 3 years ago. And so now the battle is no longer a national battle, it's back to the local states. So every state's fighting against abortion in different ways. So when I went to Florida, Ron DeSantos' state, Florida, has brought in a heartbeat law, which means the moment a heartbeat is detectable, abortion is illegal. Now, it's 6 weeks after conception, a baby's heartbeat.
That's the new law of the United States.
No, it's a new law in Florida, just
Okay.
Florida, one
Only
state.
Florida, okay.
And that's the governor, Ron DeSantis, brought that legislation, which means abortion after 6 weeks is illegal, but they're still killing babies under 6 weeks.
How?
Well, most of the people coming to the abortion clinics are getting the do-it-yourself abortion pills. They go home and they take it, and rips the insides out and makes them awfully, awfully sick and gives these women a terrible amount of bleeding, and before you know it, the baby dies within them. They poison the child to death with this so-called do-it-yourself pill. So that is where it's going now. So there still is a need for sidewalk counselling. I joined a pro-life outreach team who were standing on the sidewalks on a Saturday morning trying to persuade the mothers coming in for appointments not to kill their babies, choose life so that you and your children may live. Singing Jesus Loves Little Children. And we were trying to put literature in their hands and trying to talk to them. And interestingly, there was some very occultic, satanic, pervert, lesbian, LGBTQ characters, transgenders and so on, outside of what they called escorts. And they would open up umbrellas to shield the people coming in, and they would put themselves between us and the clients who are coming in to kill their babies. And it was amazing to see how many of the people coming to have abortions have got a crucifix or a rosary or a cross hanging from their car's rearview mirror. And many of the girls wearing a cross or a crucifix.
I know we spoke about, Donald Trump before he took the power, and,
Yes.
the expectation for many Christians were very high because they believe that Donald Trump is coming to make a big change. And I think that now the foundings is opposite to what we used to believe, because now, of course, there is somewhere there he trying to stop war, but there's other places where he tried to start war. So what do you think about that as well?
Well, when I was in America, there was a lot of anger and frustration amongst the people I was with, and these were conservative people who were normally very pro-Donald Trump and who had happily voted for his Make America Great Again movement and voted to bring back only two genders and stop the transgender insanity. And so they were very pro-Donald Trump, but they were angry about America getting involved in the war in the Middle East.
Absolutely.
They were particularly frustrated over America giving unconditional support to the State of Israel, because the State of Israel started this war with Iran by bombing them.
Absolutely.
Surprise attack. Which, isn't it interesting that if the Japanese attack America, it's unprovoked, treacherous, day of infamy, surprise attack. When Germany attacked the Soviet Union, it was unprovoked attack and treachery. Even though the Soviet Red Army was advanced on the borders of Germany and Europe, and they'd put millions of troops on the frontier, they were about to attack. So Germany argued it was a preemptive strike, and yet the verdict of history is treacherous surprise attack. When Germany attacked Poland, even though Poland was occupying and keeping captive millions of German people and abusing them in Dresden and Danzig and the Danzig corridor, it's an unprovoked attack. But if Israel attacks Iran in a surprise attack, it's preemptive strike. So Japan attacking Pearl Harbor is a day of infamy. But Israel doing the same thing to Iran, that is a preemptive strike. So the terminology being used is very deceitful. And it's not the same sense, it's double standards. And so a lot of Americans are saying, why are we supporting Israel doing a Pearl Harbor surprise attack on Iran, but we still condemn the Japanese for doing it to us back in 1941, which was also provoked, by the way.
Absolutely.
Because America was putting total economic sanctions on Japan, including preventing them getting any oil from other nations as well, so that Japan could say that they were involved in a response to aggression, because economic warfare is warfare as well. And interestingly, the Americans knew about the Japanese plans because they tracked their code anyway. So it wasn't that much of a surprise attack anyway. And that's why the American president had ordered the US Pacific Fleet to move to Pearl Harbor. That's not their headquarters. The US Pacific Fleet's headquarters was San Diego, which is on the west coast of America in California. But they were just moved there a few months before the attack into Pearl Harbor, because Pearl Harbor is halfway into the Pacific, and it was like a threat and it was like bait to the Japanese. But that's still called a day of infamy surprise attack. And so Israel does a day of infamy surprise attack while Iran is literally at the negotiation table discussing a peaceful resolution to the nuclear crisis, and which the Iranians still maintain are peaceful use for civilian energy, not for weapons. And let's face it, the American intelligence community even said that they had no evidence that Iran was producing a bomb. In fact, the nuclear inspectors from UN were allowed full access to Iran's nuclear facilities. So they were open to inspections. And so a lot of Americans were angry over the fact that how come Israel has a nuclear bomb, but Iran can't have a nuclear bomb? Israel doesn't allow nuclear inspections of their sites, and they won't sign the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Iran signed the treaty and allows inspections, but we are supporting Israel having a surprise attack while they are in good faith sitting at the negotiation table. So there was a lot of anger and frustration and disappointment being expressed amongst the churches, the pastors, the groups that I was meeting, homes I was staying in. There's no doubt that the average American conservative, pro-Trump Republican, was very angry with Israel picking this war, and many of them said, you know, if you can't finish the fight on your own, don't start it.
Absolutely.
So Israel picked the fight, and then they said, we can't finish it without America. We're going to lose this war if America doesn't come in. Well, then why did they start the war in the first place? So there was unprecedented criticism of the state of Israel, which in my visits to the United States over the many decades before, I've never come across conservative Christians so critical of Israel and of the United States unquestioning support for the state of Israel and supplying of all the weapons. Because even when you say Israel is bombing Iran, not America, but they're using American planes, they're using American munitions, and they are receiving billions of dollars of aid, and they are getting everything they need for fighting Iran from America. In many ways, people said, well, is Israel America's proxy, or is America Israel's proxy? But one or the other is controlling the other.
Yes, I think we will talk about that more in the next video, but I want you to talk about, your findings in the United States. What are the good things that you find when it comes to, Christian side, and what are the bad things in conclusion to this video?
There's no doubt that there's better morale. The people there, they were before, when I went there last year, the people there were punch drunk from all the LGBTQ, all this transgender cult business, and being harassed, and men coming into women's sports and men coming into women's bathrooms. The fact that that battle's over and finished and won has given a lot of confidence, and people who are homeschoolers and running private Christian schools feel very vindicated by the change in government policy. I did notice the cost of petrol or fuel was down over there, so that the cost of food in the shops has also gone down significantly, especially the price of eggs has gone down at least half of what it was. So there's some economic relief, and it's more acceptable to be openly Christian now, and people don't have to hide their Christian faith in schools and universities as they used to. So there's definitely some improvements. But I think there's frustration that the war in Ukraine has not ended yet, and there was tremendous frustration over the new war being started with Iran. And there was absolute hostility across the board to America getting involved directly in the war.
Thank you so much, Doctor. I think this is what we have today about Doctor's trip to the United States. We wish we could talk about it more, but we will limit ourselves here today. And maybe when we get another chance, we'll talk more about it as well. So thank you so much, and we wish you the best. May God bless you.